Hey guys, welcome to this episode of Cooking or Creations with Carrie. Today I'm going to show you how to make some soft pretzels. Soft pretzels are one of my favorite snacks because you can make them either sweet or salty. For this recipe you're going to need water, flour, baking soda, yeast, butter, sugar, and then any ingredients you might want as toppings. So cinnamon, salt, poppy seeds, anything that you might want to put on the top of your pretzels. First, you want to take a bowl and you want to put 1 cup of warm water into it. Next, you want to take your yeast and you want to put 2.5 teaspoons of yeast into your warm water. Make sure it's not too hot or you can kill the yeast, okay? I'm also going to take 1 teaspoon of sugar and add this into my water. You want to wait till all this dissolves and it is nice and frothy, and then we're going to start mixing in our flour. Now, once my mixture is frothy, which means it kind of looks like cloudy water and everything has dissolved in it, this should take anywhere from 2 to 5 minutes, okay? Now you're ready to add a couple other ingredients. So first we're going to start by adding 1 tablespoon of melted butter, 1 teaspoon of salt, and now we're going to start adding our flour. Okay, now the amount of flour you need will be dependent upon where you live. So if you live in a very dry environment, you will need a little less. We're going to add 1/2 cups at a time until we get the dough consistency that we desire. You can use an electric mixer or you can use a spatula. Both of them work completely fine. There's my first half. I have 1 cup in here now. We're adding 1/2 cup at a time so that it doesn't make a mess when you try to stir it, and so you can dissolve all of the dry ingredient into the liquid ingredient smoothly. Next 1/2 cup, so now I have 1.5 cups. You can see that it's starting to get thicker, but we have a long way to go still. We have to make some dough that we can roll out into our pretzel shapes. So now I have 2 cups. If you have a stand mixer and you have a dough feature on your standing mixer, this will make it a lot easier for you. But if you want a really good arm workout, this is a really good way to do it. See how it's getting thicker now? Here we go. 2.5. See here, we're getting some dough. This is looking great. Ooh, we're almost there. Now, once it starts to form together like this and becomes more solid, don't add a full 1/2 cup. Add just little by little because you don't want to make your dough too dry. Okay? We want this to be firm enough so that I can work with it with my hands without it sticking to all over my hands. So I'm just going to start sprinkling some on and mixing that in there. Okay, so it took me about 2 3/4 cups until I can remove it from my bowl and start kneading my mixture. Okay, so the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn on my oven and preheat it to 475 degrees, which yes, is very hot, but you want your pretzels to bake at a really high temperature. And then I'm gonna lay these out on my counter and I'm gonna start to knead them so that we can actually make our pretzel shape. So when you are ready to knead your dough, you first want to clean off your workspace. You want to sanitize it, and then you also want to dry it. You don't want a wet workspace because everything will stick to it, okay? So you want to start by sprinkling some flour onto your workspace. If you have any jewelry like rings, you may want to take them off so that you don't get dough stuck in them. So I'm going to spread this out. I'm going to put some flour on my hands as well, because that's going to help the dough not stick to my hands. Now I'm going to take my dough, I'm going to pour it onto my surface here, just like this. I'm going to pour a little extra flour on top of it, and then I'm going to start to knead my dough. To do this, I'm going to fold it up and press it down. Fold it up and press it down. I want to use the palms of my hands to press it down in order to make a nice smooth dough. If you find that parts of it stick to your hands, then add a little more flour on top. We want to make a really nice pliable dough that we can roll out some delicious pretzels with. Okay, so notice how the dough is sticking to my hands less, and I'm starting to work with it more. This is a really good sign. You want to knead it for about 2 minutes until you get a really nice dough texture. You want it to be springy, which means when you poke it, it bounces back. It doesn't just stay flat. This means that your yeast is working and that your pretzels are going to rise really nicely. Okay? Now, once I've kneaded my dough, I'm going to spray some oil into the bowl where I did my mixing. I'm going to let my dough rest in my bowl for about 15 minutes. And while my dough rests, I'm going to prepare some of my other ingredients for my toppings for when I'm finally ready to put my dough and bake it. While you are waiting for your dough to rest and set a little bit, you're going to be making your baking soda mixture. This mixture is really important because it's going to help it give the crunch on the outside of your pretzel to make it nice and golden brown. So to do this, you want to take 2 cups of water, pour it into a pot that you can put onto the stove, and you want to take 4 tablespoons of baking soda. Okay, so this is a half a tablespoon, so I actually need 8 of these. Six, 7, 8. Okay, you want to place this on the stove and you want to let it boil until all of the baking soda has dissolved, and then we're going to let it cool down to lukewarm, and we're going to place it on a baking tray, and this is what we're going to dip our pretzels in before we put them into the oven. So there are 2 other things you can do while you're waiting for your dough to rest. You can first prepare the things you're going to put on top of it. So I'm going to do some of mine with butter and salt and some of mine with cinnamon and sugar. For the cinnamon and sugar ones, you just want to make a cinnamon and sugar mixture. So you just want to take some sugar and put it into a container, preferably a container with a lid, and I'll tell you why in a second, and then sprinkle some cinnamon onto it. Depends how much you like cinnamon, however you want your ratio to be. Remember, cinnamon does get kind of bitter though. And then you want to take your lid and you just want to shake it. Super easy. Now I have cinnamon and sugar. For my butter, I want it to be liquid, so you just want to put it into the microwave for around 30 seconds. This is half a stick of butter until it's completely melted, because when you're done, then you're going to brush the butter on top of your pretzels. For the baking soda and water mixture, mine has completely dissolved now, so I'm going to pour it into a baking dish. You want to make sure this dish is big enough so you can actually submerge your pretzel into it, okay? So make sure it's bigger than the size pretzel you plan on making. So I'm going to pour my mixture into here, and you can see it looks completely clear. You can barely tell there's anything in it, okay? So I'm going to let this sit and cool for a little bit so it becomes lukewarm, and then we're going to start forming our pretzels. Hey guys, so my dough has now rested for the full 15 minutes. As you can see, it got a little bigger. It's very springy. So now I'm going to cut my dough into 8 pieces. So you want to take a knife, this is my favorite knife, and you want to cut your dough. I'm first cutting it across, cutting into fourths, and then cutting it into my 8 pieces. Okay, now if it sticks together a little bit, it's totally understandable, just break apart your pieces. If you find that it's a little sticky, roll it in the flour. Flour is your friend. So I'm going to take one piece at a time and put these off to the side. I'm going to roll it out into a long snake, okay? You want your snake to be at least 1 foot long, if not longer. Start rolling it. If you find there are parts that are sticky, again, just add more flour, okay? If you're not able to roll it and you're finding it's really difficult to roll, then you can just kind of stretch it in your hands like this. I find that this is actually easier than trying to roll it out. It's a lot. If your dough breaks like this, simply pinch it back together. It won't hurt it at all. Okay? Once you've stretched your dough out to at least 1 foot long, you want to make it in the pretzel shape. To do this, you want to curl it, twist it, and pinch it on the sides. Okay? So I made a cute little pretzel right here. Now I'm going to take my adorable little pretzel. I'm going to put it into my baking soda mixture. I'm going to let it sit there for 2 minutes. Once it's sat for 2 minutes, I'm going to place it onto my baking sheet, and I'm going to bake them for about 8 to 9 minutes until they are a slight golden brown. Okay guys, so I just took my pretzels out of the oven. They are extremely hot, but this is when you want to put your toppings on. So first, I'm going to take a spatula just to loosen them a little bit. And next, I'm going to put my toppings on. So first, I'm going to brush some butter on. You want to be very generous with your butter. And now, this is where you can choose to make them sweet or savory. So I am going to do some of mine with cinnamon and sugar, and some of mine with regular salt. If you have large salt, that would do a little better, but I just have regular salt. So I'm just going to put some salt on this one, and on my others, I'm going to do some cinnamon and sugar. If you have a sprinkle bottle, like a spice bottle or something, you want to put your cinnamon and sugar into, you can do that. I'm just using my fingers, and it works just as well. If this is not enough cinnamon and sugar for you, then put more butter on it so more cinnamon and sugar will stick. You could also flip them over and put some on the back as well. Okay? So once you have this on, you're going to want to let them cool for a few minutes and then enjoy. I hope your pretzels turn out really well.